So, what do we talk about so far? We discussed our limited existence, first of all, limited in the sense that the things we're after are pretty limited. Of course, there's suffering anyway, but even besides that, our happiness is very limited in the ways I described. So I kind of like the analogy like a board full of nails, and our whole life we're just jumping from one nail to the next. And when you jump first, right? I mean, you don't jump like with that much power, but you kind of move on to the next nail. Initially, it doesn't hurt as much. And then if you remain too long on that nail, it starts to pierce into your skin and it starts getting painful. So it's like we have to switch. And then the absence of the previous moment, having stayed too long, that absence we consider to be happiness, right? But we still have worry, we still have everything else. Our mind is still not able to fully experience that kind of happiness that we could potentially experience. So, but there's a release that's what we call happiness. And then it gets worse, starts getting painful. Whatever object it is, we have to change again. And in that way, it's never like real pleasure, but at least it's the absence of something worse. Yeah. So it's not the absence totally of suffering, but the absence of something worse. And that we consider to be happiness. Why is that the case? Because we have this mind and this body. That's it. We have this particular mind and body. It's fragile. It's susceptible to any kind of trouble. And that's because of our mind mainly. So we have gotten a body in this life, we have this particular body. We were attached to this body, but let's face it has only been with us for a few years now. I mean, the mind has been with us forever. We've had this mind, its continuum for so long, but the body is relatively new. But it's so fragile. Body's so fragile. I mean, think of karuṇā. How big was that virus? And it's like, it's so tiny, you couldn't even see it with your bare eyes, and still it created havoc in the body of so many people. Yeah, so having this body, it's very vulnerable, very fragile, and this mind anyway, and it all comes from the mind. But why? Why does it come from the mind? What is the problem with our mind? Well, there's no problem as such. It's much more, we have everything to become a Buddha, actually. It's really important. We have everything to become enlightened. We don't need to bring anything in from the outside. We just need to learn to remove what's extra, what's not in the nature of our mind, and what's causing us so much trouble. Without asking where exactly does that come from, which would be like with the analysis or the analogy of the arrow, right? Being shot by an arrow, all you need to do is pull it out. So don't ask who created it, where it came from, and so forth. Just know that I'm just repeating, so no problem. I'm just going over what we did before, so no one missed anything. There's still one person missing. I'm sure he's coming soon. So anyway, we don't need to ask where does that where does that misconception, that fundamental misconception come from? No need to ask that, it's just there. Now let's deal with it. Let's deal with it by understanding it and understanding what it gives rise to. Right now we're looking at what it gives rise to. We haven't really dealt with that mind to the extent of understanding that its object doesn't exist, so that would be understanding emptiness, basically. No, but we deal with something that is easier, which is the fact that it gives rise to an exaggerated mind when it comes to the self, first of all, right? Exaggerating the importance. So we misperceive everything in that. We perceive everything to exist concretely. We use the word inherently. That is not a word we use that often in the English language. Sometimes we do say, oh, it's inherent. We say, for instance, it's inherent in fire to be hot, right? It's inherent in water to be wet. That's how it's used. It's naturally, intrinsically, it's like that. which is fine. We can use this word that way. In fact, when we talk about independent, everything is dependently arisen. On one hand, we say that, but it doesn't mean you cannot say India is an independent country. It is an independent country. But what is it? Is there an absolute independent India? No. No. It does depend, of course, on other countries. It depends on more than just the country. It depends on oxygen. It depends on the weather. That's not India. It still depends on all that. So we use the word independently in relation to the political situation. For instance, it can determine its own political decisions to a certain degree, as other countries, the same way. But in relation to certain aspects, we call it independent, and that's correct. But when we say phenomena don't exist independently, we're saying that whatever there is no absolute independence. So absolute would mean not in relation to this, that, or the other, but just in and of itself. And that's impossible, right? Likewise with inherently, we can use it on a daily basis saying water is inherently wet, for instance. But there's something interesting that may help us to understand this idea of inherently. So we feel there's an inherent I. We use that word a lot, right? There's something inherent, something within us. What does the word inherent usually mean? Well, let me give you an example. When I ask you, is water inherently or naturally wet? What would you say? Yes. Now my next question is water inherently hot? No, you wouldn't say it's naturally or inherently hot. Why is it not naturally or inherently hot? Because it depends on something other than itself in order to become. You need a source of heating, and only then does it become hot. But from a Buddhist point of view, well, water also depends on something other than itself to be water. For instance, oxygen. Oxygen is not water. But if you didn't have oxygen, you wouldn't have water. Hydrogen. Hydrogen is not water. But if you didn't have hydrogen, you wouldn't have water. Because you need 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. So, therefore, the same argument saying that water is inherently wet on a daily conventional basis, that's fine. Right? We could say, well, it is inherently because it's always wet, otherwise it's not water. Okay. But looking back at the hot water, really the idea is it's not in and of itself hot. Hot. The water is not in and of itself. You need something else to make it hot. And then from a Buddhist point of view, you could argue, well, water is not inherently wet because you need something else. For instance, you need the skin to perceive it. I mean, what does it make it wet? Right? It feels wet on the skin. What does wetness even mean? Like, does the table experience wetness? No, we say the table is wet, but it's not like that wetness, oh, the table goes, I'm so wet. No, it's actually, we call it wet in relation to how it feels on our skin. Right? First, something needs to get wet. Wet means something must get wet. Okay, so we can say the table gets wet or my skin gets wet. But this feeling also has to be there, right? That sensation of getting wet. Does that make sense? Okay. And then let's take fire. What is fire? It's inherently hot. Well, if there was no one to experience it, I mean, the table, does it feel hot? No. A stone, does it feel hot? No. How do we know it's hot? Because we touch it. Therefore, it's in relation to our own mind. Right? I mean, let's say there was a species that perceived fire as cold. Could be, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of animal that would be, but let's say there's some weird frog somewhere in the middle of nowhere that when we have the perception of heat, it perceives cold, it feels cold. So the question now is the fire hot or is it cold? In relation to us, it's hot. In relation to the frog, it's cold. Which takes us, of course, also back to the temperature, the whole issue of, remember I said initially, our happiness right now is very limited. That's like +5 degree or +10 degree. But just because we experienced worse. So in comparison to the worst experience, we perceive that as true happiness. Whereas in comparison to an arhat and so forth, they would experience something much warmer as true happiness. Now this can also be used for what is hot and what is cold, not as an analogy, but for an actual analysis of what are 15 degrees and what are they? Are they hot or are they cold? If you ask someone from Delhi, they would say it's cold. If you ask someone from Siberia, they would say it's a heat wave. I don't know whether they experience that. They probably experience now more than 15 degrees. But the point is, therefore, it just depends. It depends. We even answer that way. If I ask you, is the spoon short or long? You would probably go, well, either, okay, it's long because it's longer than all the spoons that I know, or it's short because it's shorter than all. But in the end, if you have nothing to compare to, you would say, well, it depends. It depends. Is this hot or cold? It depends. Sorry, is this hot or cold? Is this long or short? Hot or cold, you could also say, it kind of feels warm to the touch. But then, anyway. So you see that everything can only be this, that, or something else if there's something else it relates to. Yeah? Therefore, hot water is naturally, inherently hot. Yeah, we may say that, but actually, that would imply it doesn't need anything else to be wet. Well, at least it needs some skin to feel the wetness. Or when a fire is inherently hot, well, it needs someone to experience that. Yeah? Or burning. Usually the definition given is it's hot and burning. Fire is hot and burning. But what needs to burn something, not everything burns. So in relation to, I don't know, a stone or some fireproof material, it's not burning. But in relation to certain materials, it is. So it's always in relation to something other than itself, which is why we use the word inherently, which actually means it just is. And it's got nothing, it's not dependent on anything else. It just is in the sense it's inherent. There's an inherent I. There's an I already. And so I just call it the I because it's already there. When in actuality, it's exactly the other way around. It's there because I called it that. It's a table because we call it that. If no one were to call this a table, didn't use it as a table, would it be one or not? That's the big question, isn't it? Yeah, it's getting a little bit harder. But besides that, let's go back to these other emotions. We spoke already about our root misconception, perceiving there to be an inherent I, something intrinsic within me, something right there that has always been there, and something within this table, something within. What happened to this guy? Is he all right?
He was feeling a bit sick due to cold and cough.
Oh, okay, I see. All right. Okay. So, therefore, we perceive everything to exist in that way, and if it was just that, it wouldn't be a big problem, but of course it then gives rise to, psychologically, to certain other minds. With regard to the self, we exaggerate the importance of the I, and then there's an emotional response. From there, then, all the other mental afflictions arise. Now, let's take attachment. Before attachment arises to another person, there's also the exaggerating aspect. We again exaggerate. We project some positiveness to that onto that person that they don't have. Which is really interesting. I had this experience when I was 16 years old. For some reason that really got stuck in my mind. Well, when I first met the Dharma, it wasn't that long ago, so therefore it felt pretty fresh. I was infatuated with a schoolmate of mine. He was actually in the class above, but we were like, the girls in my class, we were more interested in the guys in the next class. And so I really thought he was so amazing, but I never talked to him, never did. He didn't know me, I don't think he even knew my name. And then he went to the US for 1 year and came back. Anyway, so before he left, there was like a program, like a 1 year abroad program, and then he was actually my classmate. But before he left, I was so infatuated with him. So I had this really strong attachment. So in my mind, before the attachment, I guess, arose, I was exaggerating his positive qualities. I didn't even know him, honestly. I never even talked to him. So I don't know what I was thinking, of what actor he reminded me of, whatever, for whatever reason. But I thought he was so amazing that even his backpack looked amazing. That sense of him being so amazing, it was so powerful, it was almost like a halo that covered his backpack. It was his backpack, so it was amazing. I guess that's how modern advertisement works. Shah Rukh Khan's got that backpack, everyone wants it. Not everyone, but a lot of people, right? We kind of attach to, I don't know, certain actors and actresses. I don't even know their name. I know Shah Rukh Khan. For the guys, I know Kajol, but that's a long time ago. Abhishek, no. Aishwarya Rai? Aishwarya Rai. She's old now, right? When I first came to India, it was like Dil Deewana, Bin Sache Naake. That was playing all the time. How old I am. That was the song when I first came. It was Dil Deewana, Bin Sache Naake. Manina, that's the only thing I can say in Hindi, really, because it was playing everywhere. Anyway, so whatever, the actors or actresses, there's an attachment we have to them. I guess to a certain degree, we see them as so amazing. So even the stuff they wear, all that, the stuff they carry around, that becomes part of it. So it's really exaggerating. That's why they're so good at advertising things, and they get a lot of money for it, because they're so effective. I mean, even Richard Gere, he doesn't know that much about Buddhism, but his YouTube videos on Buddhism, they're like the most popular ones. Like, his almost doesn't get that many clicks, and he doesn't even know that much, I mean, besides acting, how much time did he have to study and practice? Even just now he gets more time. So the point is, it's just our mind, how mind works. We attach to something and then we exaggerate. And so therefore, well, that's the first part. But not just that. After he came back from the US, because out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, I remember thinking, what did I see in him? I mean, he hadn't changed that much, but I was wondering, what was so incredible about him? I couldn't see it. Because why? My mind exaggerated. My mind exaggerated. And that gave rise to the attachment, right? And nothing came from it, so it was totally fine. I mean, we never even got to know each other. I think he got my name eventually because he became my classmate, but I couldn't care less. And it was actually a good friend who was became his girlfriend. But anyway, the point is that that's what our mind does. It first exaggerates, and then attachment arises. Now, the same is true for aversion. And it's not just exaggerating, there's more to it. There's more to it. Sometimes with aversion, it's a little bit more obvious. So let's look at aversion. Let's say someone harms us. Someone says something, someone insults us, someone threatens our happiness. Maybe threatens our reputation. Insult is pretty much that. Or we're attached to being praised and we get the opposite, for instance, being insulted, being criticized. So what happens is that negativity, it's that action, right? First of all, there's the focus is on that action. If our neighbor, who we don't like, had been insulted, how would we have reacted? Well done, more of that, right? We would have rejoiced, we would have been really happy. So it's the opposite response. Oh yeah, more of it. But if it's the I, very different response, because we're not attached to the neighbor, we're attached to this I. And now if we were insulted, this whole, the whole analytical meditation basically starts off. We start analyzing and analyzing and analyzing, and then we exaggerate that negativity. As part of that analysis, I mean, I've done so well, and I've done this for them, and how dare they, there's this process, and it's pretty fast. Doesn't need that long. It's not like hours and hours. Wait a minute, I need to focus. No, it goes. This is the only time we're fully focused. If you think about it, you can be in the middle of New York, Times Square. Someone insults you, that meditation works perfectly. It's only when it's not out of attachment to the I, when we just do it in order to develop our mind, when things get difficult. Oh, just one bird in the wrong place. Oh, we get all annoyed. But in the middle of Times Square, we can all do it, right? Incredible how concentration works in that moment. So we all have concentration, but unfortunately in moments they're not that helpful. Anyway, so it says quick. Our mind is so fast. And then we exaggerate that negativity. But the thing is, not only do we exaggerate it so that we can no longer see any good quality, just with that mind, once the anger is over, we can go back to look at them, look at their good qualities. But when that mind is active in our mental continuum, we can only see the negativity. And it's so strong that positive qualities can no longer appear. And not just that, what also happens is that these negativities become one with the person. It's not like, yes, they have this negativity. They have said something to me, kind of being able to separate between the person and what they've done, which we want other people to do when it comes to us. Oh, don't define me by what I've done, right? Don't define me. Don't think I'm the person who's made that mistake. I made a mistake. So please don't, I'm more than that. We usually have that strong sense, and that's realistic. We are more than our mistakes. But within this aversion, when we have aversion towards this other person, they're not more than anything than that. They are that negativity. Because actually, the insult is what we should hate. But we don't hate the insult. We hate the person. So we hate that which is a part of the person. We don't hate that which is the actual, like what really caused the anger is the insult. That's not the person. It's the insult by the person. So even grammatically, they're obviously not identical. And still, we are upset with the person. So it's totally wrong mind. It's wrong from the point of view of exaggerating the negativity. It's wrong from the point of view of seeing no positive qualities. And it's wrong from the point of view of seeing the person as negative. And only being upset with the person and not with the insult. It's not like, oh, you bloody insult you. No, it's just the person. We believe there's this inherent I that is like the controller of the whole thing, and now through this insult at us, right? Very concrete I, knowing exactly what it's doing, purposely to harm me, that I. So you see, it's all like an exaggeration of really what's happening. We're not aware that they're angry, possibly. They're under the control of their anger. This is why Shantideva gives such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way to look at anger. When he says, when we get angry, right? Someone hits us with a stick. Let's say someone hits you with a stick. Do you get angry with a stick? No, because the stick is not in control. So it causes directly the pain, but it's not in control. Well, likewise, we shouldn't get angry with the person who harms us because they are under the control of their anger. So we should get angry with the anger, not with the person, because they're under the control of their anger. Just like the stick is under the control of the person, right? The stick is like, but in actuality, when we get angry with someone, we don't get angry with what actually caused them to harm us, which is their own anger, their own misconception. We get angry with the person. We stop there. So therefore, in so many ways, in at least 3 ways, it's a mistaken wrong mind. It's a wrong mind. Right? The exaggeration is threefold. Exaggerating the negativity, being unable to see any positive quality in that moment, and thirdly, seeing that person and what caused the insult or whatever as one. Not looking at the cause, but looking at the result, which is the person themselves, right? I mean, they are now the result. This person is the result of their own anger. First there was anger, and then they acted. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
Which one?
Like the last part.
Oh, with the anger. Okay, so let's take the example with this. I think the stick analogy is really good. What caused the stick to hurt me? The person. The person was in control. The person was the one that used the stick in such a way that it hurt me. But the person was also not in control. The person was under the control of the anger. It was the anger in their mental continuum that caused them to then lash out. So am I angry with their anger? No, I'm not. I'm angry with the person. Right? And that's wrong. Why would I be angry with the person? I should be angry with the actual perpetrator. But this is where with the stick we're fine. We have no problem with the stick. But we have a problem understanding that a person and their mind are not the same and that they're different minds. Again, like, I don't want other people to dislike me because of my anger. I would feel strongly, I'm not just my anger. But when it comes to other people, we believe they are. Especially when they harm me, then I believe they're just that negativity. Does that make any sense? Right? Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, hopefully my explanation made sense, but it doesn't make sense that we react in that way. I mean, that's what I meant, but does that make any sense? So really, it's not based in reality. It's an extreme response. And it leads to a extreme, of course, reaction from our side. Okay, so misperceiving what's there. Then we dislike them. We may want to strike back. We want to harm them. And the thing is also what we totally forget, something that I said yesterday. All our experiences are subjective. That's a very, very important point in Buddhism. There is no objective. So what is reality? It's the sum of everyone's personal reality, of every living being's personal reality. So we believe there's this external world that exists independent of mind. Forget it. And fortunately, there's modern science that very much supports that. Think of quantum physics. I mean, I don't know much about quantum physics. It's this one word that every Tibetan can say, because the Soulness has mentioned it so many times. I've even had elderly Tibetans who don't speak a word of English saying, well, remember quantum physics. But the point is, the little that I do understand is that you need an observer for these subtle particles. The way they behave has to do with the observer. So you need a mind for the most basic building blocks to exist and to function in certain ways. That is very much in accordance with Buddhism. Secondly, in modern physics, we've heard there are no colors out there. They're just light waves. So it feels these colors are over there. They're beautifully yellow and blue and what have you. But in reality, that is just the way my mind interprets, or my brain interprets these light waves. That's all it is. Therefore, it becomes much more obvious there's no objective reality out there. Therefore, what I experience right now is the result of my actions in the past. Every action, every experience I have. So when we say karma, as you all know, karma really just means action, and a volitional action, not just an instinctive or not a reflex. We're talking about volitional actions. So whatever actions, if I want to harm someone, for instance, I act out of that wish to harm that person, I harm them, because that is also, it leaves something in my mind. Nothing gets lost. Every action leaves something on the mind, and that then results in similar experiences. Now, this is something so interesting, this idea. And I remember just a few weeks ago, I was bored and I decided I'm going to watch something on YouTube. So I chose near-death experiences. I thought it was so interesting, that whole phenomenon. And there's so much of people who had near-death experiences. And it's so interesting. And people who were in a coma with very little brain activity, they talk about it. There was a guy called Stephen Eber. He was a neuroscientist, or Eber something, not Stephen Eber, Eber something. He wrote a book about this experience. He was in a coma that wasn't very long, but he had the sense he was for years, they had this, like, the time perception is very, very different. And the point is, like, what I'm trying to say, without mentioning so much this Eber guy, but more these near-death experiences, all of them, the ones that were interviewed in the different documentaries I watched, they all said something, and sometimes they were just short clips, but they all said the same, in that their life kind of ran past them. It was in actuality very fast, but many of them had a sense that their whole life they re-experienced it. They went back, and they said that they had a sense when they hurt someone, they felt the full hurt of hurting that person. So they had hurt someone really badly, and that had been something that had been an issue with them for a long time, and they totally felt what the other person felt in that moment. I was thinking, wow, in that moment it fully came back, because they felt what the other person felt. So I'm not saying that this is the karmic response, but it shows that our mind is such that if we harm others, eventually there's a way in which we have at least a sense of what we've done by experiencing what they experienced. While on the other hand, another person who maybe she hadn't harmed someone in such a profound way, something else that she reported, and it doesn't mean she didn't have that experience, but she talked about something else. She said she was wronged really badly by someone. I think it was her parents. And it was a pain she carried with her whole life, being wronged so badly. But in her near-death experience, she totally understood where her parents were coming from. She understood the mind of her parents. She knew, and when she came back, she was like, oh my God, now I get it. You know, she only ever saw her own perspective, but then so you see, there is this interaction between all of us, and even if we just see one side now, when we die, it's probably just a normal process to actually get a sense of the other side. Now, that could be part of a karma, that's part of the karmic response, but of course it also means that eventually in another life we will actually experience something similar. Not the same situation again, just from a different perspective, but something similar depending on what it was. So that's so interesting, therefore, that what goes around comes around kind of idea, right? Like a carousel, like, you know, like you give something out, eventually it comes back. This is just a law of nature. It's a law of nature, just as the law of gravity. There is a law, what goes out comes back, because we're interconnected. So if you put, I don't know, some poison in the water, it'll come back eventually. Yeah, I mean, just from the point of view of the environment, it's not like you live in a bubble. You can just get away with like throwing stuff out and just hope for it to disappear. You know, it becomes part of the whole cycle. So in a similar way, and we get that with the environment, but in a similar way, our mental actions, which result in physical and verbal actions, right, they're very much governed by, they eventually come back to us. Now, when we get angry, first of all, it's not in accordance with reality, our response. But secondly, we don't realize that being insulted, the person insulting us is not the main cause. That person is just the trigger. In the sense that whatever annoyed them, that triggered a negative karma, a negative karmic actions that I've accumulated. That's the main cause. But we never blame that. I didn't do anything, I helped them for... But no, the thing is, if I hadn't accumulated an action of like maybe insulting someone, I wouldn't have experienced that. It's impossible. And the problem is when we react the way we do, we blame the other person, and now we want to, pay them back, and we create exactly the same karma again. So we just experienced it. It's gone now. Let's say we've experienced the karma of like being insulted, and it's just that one insult. We've insulted a person once. The karma didn't even multiply in the ways it can multiply. So basically, okay, one insult and it comes back, and done, karma gone. But then, wonderful, I create it once again. Thank you very much. Right? I'll just do it all over again. This is how, not knowing what's actually happening, we keep harming ourselves. Because the thing is, why does it happen to me, but someone else who does something similar, it doesn't happen to? For me, a good example was that something terrible that just happened a few weeks ago. I was so upset the whole time. It was so close to home. It was the plane crash in Ahmedabad, yeah. Wow, I thought, oh my God, that's so close. It's not that close, but it felt really, really close. And I always travel with Air India, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And the whole day, and then I hear about the guy who walked away. I was like, oh, this is such good news. I'm so happy. You make me so happy. And the nuns, they were all the same. We shared that news. But I was thinking, boy, karma. I mean, like, I listened to these interviews afterwards. There was this aviation person from the West saying, how did he survive? This is the most unlikely place in a plane to survive. The best place apparently is in the very back. You have the smell of the toilet, but maybe you survive when something happens, apparently. He said that's the safest place, actually, because usually the front. So the place he was in, usually you don't survive. But the thing was, not only did he survive, he walked out of that plane, and you see him walking, slightly limping, but basically walking to his own, whereas the person right next to him died. So he didn't have the karma to die. He just didn't, right? I mean, I'm not saying, oh, everyone else had the karma to, I mean, it's like they're worse than he was. No, the thing is, we've all created pretty much similar karma. Yeah, so we basically all created the karma to die in an airplane. But the difference can be in terms of what triggers it or not. And in that moment, it didn't trigger it for him. And since it wasn't triggered, he survived. He did. And there are again and again examples where people, like everyone else, is affected, but they're not. For me, that is not just coincidence. I mean, there's no scientific explanation for why it happened in such a way that I guess you could make something up. All right, it was like this and like that. But why was he in that spot? And why what? Or this other person who tried to catch that plane and never made it onto the plane, right? So it's like everyone else did, but this person didn't. That is coincidence? Oh, come on. There are too many examples like that. So of course I'm talking to many of you from India, and this is it's not that difficult, but for us in the West, it's difficult, that idea, right? It's not that easy. But it's not like some kind of lump of karma that's like, floating above our head or something. No, it's just actions that constantly are created and constantly lead to different experiences. Because if there's nothing externally, there's externally, yeah, but no objective reality out there, since it's all dependent on the mind, therefore our experiences are dependent on the mind. And if they're dependent on the mind, what causes them? That's pretty straightforward then. Harming others results in harm. Benefiting others results in benefit. It all makes sense. Now, initially, especially when you have a background the way we have in Europe, in Western countries, it's so materialistic. We so believe in materialism that karma is the last thing we believe in, right? We believe in this external world. And now in India, it's pretty much the same, right? We believe in the brain more than we believe in the mind. We believe in there's this objective world out there. Those scientists no longer do, but we're a little behind. I mean, they do say it's all dependent on, right? And now there's a lot more acceptance of mind. Mind is not the same as the brain. More and more scientists agree with that. But the point is that we are too materialistic at this point. It's very hard. It makes it so much harder to understand the Dharma because of our obsession with the material world. And the material world, of course, exists, but not independent of our mind. That's very important. But getting back to the afflictions, therefore, in that moment, does our reaction, getting angry and acting out of that anger, make any sense? Well, not if we don't want to suffer. Not if we don't want to suffer. Right? So we act in a negative way. But of course, it's all conventional. I mean, I seem to be talking as if there was an inherent good or bad, for instance. So far, I use the word good or bad. So remember I said in the beginning, we have a sense that the I exists in and of itself as an I, it doesn't depend on anything. And this is true for anything else. It seems even for good and bad. When we say virtuous and non-virtuous action, that seems to be natural, to be virtuous or non-virtuous, right? Inherently, doesn't it? No. It's neither good nor bad. It's neither good nor bad. These actions, what makes a loving action virtuous? Is it in and of itself virtuous? No. It's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, neither. Just as the spoon in and of itself is neither long or short. It's neither long, is it long or short? It's none of these. If you don't talk in relation to something other than it, you can't say it's either one or the other. Likewise, being good or bad, virtuous or non-virtuous, are not in and of themselves this or the other. So why do we say virtuous? Why do we say non-virtuous? What's the reason? What makes them virtuous? In relation to what are they virtuous?
Positive aspects of the mind are they virtuous?
Yeah, but that's the same, the positive. What makes it positive? In relation to what is love? Why don't we say anger is positive, anger is virtuous, and love is non-virtuous? Why don't we say that? Yes.
Because of karma.
Okay, so because...
Virtuous is giving you good karma, not virtuous.
But why is it good karma? Why do we call it good karma?
Because it's gets you closer to the liberation, so-called.
Okay, because it takes us... Okay, all right. Yeah, in a way you're right. But it's more straightforward than that. Yes?
When it comes back, it feels good. It's like
Okay. All right, okay. Now let's imagine a world where we love to be insulted, where we want nothing more than being robbed and killed and insulted, right? We love to suffer, what we call suffering now, right? If it was all the other way around, the way it's not right now, we crave, we crave to be liked, we crave to be popular, but let's say it's the other way around. Would anger be good or bad? It would be good. So it's in relation to what we want, what our mind wants. It's as simple as that. We want to be happy. We want to experience, we want to have certain experiences. So you're right about the liberation in that way, but why is there liberation in the first place? Why do we want to be? Because we want to be happy. We want to be free from certain states of mind. And if certain actions create these states of mind we don't like, we label them negative. You know how this, for the first time, really sank in? I hadn't really given it much thought. There's this funny experience, funny thing that I usually tell people. Some of you may have heard it, I don't know, but I usually tell people this story when I translated for one of my teachers, Geshema Kelsang, an incredible teacher. He used to, when his holiness gave teachings, longer teachings, he would do the review class afterwards, and I would translate for him. So on one of those occasions, he started his teachings by saying, the Buddha is bad. Buddha is bad. Love is bad. Anger is good. And I was like, what? Can you repeat that? So I must have misheard. So he repeated it, and I said, Gela, did you just say? And he's like, just translate. And I did. And people went, whoa, the Buddha's bad. Right? They were all like in shock. I mean, they were like, what? What's going on? They were like totally confused. And then he said, love is bad because you can destroy something. Anger is good because it gives rise to something. And then I got it. Right? Well, love is bad because it destroys suffering. So if you think in relation to destroying something, and usually destroying has a negative connotation, so destroying suffering. And if we really wanted to suffer, we wouldn't like love because it destroys our suffering. So in that sense, it's only in relation to what we want. And we can take it from there because we're all similar in not wanting to suffer. And we're all similar in not wanting to get killed, in not wanting to be robbed of our possessions. Maybe in some rare cases, people love that they get robbed, but usually not. However, there are some things where it's a lot more dependent on the past, like political views. You like Congress or you like BJP? I mean, it's probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's kind of like, yeah, some like this party and some others, and then maybe a third or fourth party. I think you have lots of parties, right? I mean, so you might like another. So you consider that one party good and the other one bad. And then your neighbor has the opposite view. What is it? Are they good or are they bad? It depends. It depends on what we want. You want to pay less taxes? You may choose this party. I don't know which party does what, but just saying. Or you want to get more subsidies when you're a farmer? Well, this is what you're going to choose. You want to get more, I don't know, security, safety for a woman to go out at night if you live in Delhi, then you may choose another, you know, like whatever the promises they make. And if that's to you, to your life in any way important, then you choose that party and you label good. In and of itself is not good. It's a relation to what you want. But then we so disagree. They can lead to so much, so many conflicts. I mean, I know in the US, like Trump versus Biden, it split families into two. Wouldn't talk to each other because they were like, this guy, he's crazy, or this guy is crazy, and they were all, yeah. So, but this is not realizing it's all in relation to what we want, right? In relation to so many aspects. It's not as simple as that, good and bad. And nothing is totally bad, and nothing is totally good, right? I mean, every government has definitely done some, I mean, I'm thinking of Putin. I mean, what he does right now, it's terrible. But he's also done a lot of good for Russia. I mean, that country was a mess after Boris Yeltsin. I think he was the last president before Putin. It was a mess. He was an alcoholic who couldn't control anything. And basically Putin came in there and he really made some changes. So it's not all bad. But with our anger and our aggression, they're very black and white. And that's a huge problem, that black and white thinking anyway. Therefore, looking at anger, it's very black. Now, let's do the same with attachment. It does exactly that, but the other way around. With anger, it's a little bit more obvious. With attachment, not. Let's take attachment, because we have a lot more attachment than we have anger. So let's take attachment. It's similar. A person does something, says something, looks in a certain way, which triggers a positive response, a positive emotion. Then we exaggerate that positive aspect. We no longer see the negative, plus that quality and the person we see as one. And now we want to be with that person. Right? So it's an extreme emotion. What is the normal counterpart, the realistic counterpart? Well, I guess you could say liking someone or even loving someone, love, from a Buddhist point of view. Love in Buddhism is defined as an affectionate attitude that wants someone to be happy. So, as long as I don't exaggerate love, and we do love people, but it's usually a mixture. Like I have my moments when I truly want them to be happy, and then these moments when I truly want them to make me happy. So you see, attachment is directed at the self. Love is directed at the other person. Right? So even anger, like what is anger? What is the realistic counterpart? Well, it's recognizing that the other person is making a mistake and condemning that. You know, feeling a sense of this is not okay, right? Feeling like, okay, it shouldn't be like that. This is not just. That's an okay reaction. We don't hate the person for that, but we still see a negativity where there is a negativity. And speak up, for instance, out of a sense, this is not okay. That's not exaggerated. You look at the action and you can forgive the person. You can forgive the person, you just can't forget the, you're not supposed to forgive the action. You don't need to forgive the action, right? So to see a negativity for what it is, a sense of this is not okay, and speaking up, that's totally okay. But we don't do that. We get angry with the person, we hate them, we exaggerate the negativity in the sense it becomes a lot worse than it actually is because of me. In the case of attachment, well, loving someone, right? Liking them, having a sense of closeness towards them, but not because I can't live without them and I can't be happy without them. That's different. No, because we recognize what we have in common, that we're not as different as we believe, that it's just a matter of perspective, I, others, and not more than that. So there's not that distance that's created in our mind. Instead, there is a feeling of closeness that is in accordance with reality, and therefore a feeling of closeness that is not in contradiction to how things exist, and definitely not guided by self-centeredness. Versus they're doing something good for me, so instead of wanting them to be happy, I'm expecting them to make me happy. And I want to control them, so I can make sure they can continue to be around me. Does that make sense? So you see, they're just exaggerated emotions. They're all exaggerations based on that moment before when the exaggerated aspect takes place, right? I said every of these emotions is preceded by a moment of exaggeration, like a wrong view, I guess you could say, where it's just an extreme projecting mind. And that extreme projecting mind then gives rise to an emotional response. That is also extreme. Extreme in that it harms us more than the person that is directed at. They may not even know we hate them, right? And even they may not care if we do. They hate us back, so what do they care? Kind of thing. Therefore, it harms us more than anyone else. And these extreme emotions, or these afflictive emotions, as they're called, mentally afflicting emotions, they are a real enemy. And it's important to understand where it all started. Misconception, when it comes to all phenomena, and of course of all those, most importantly, we need to look at the I here. Then exaggerating the importance of that I, attachment to the I, which is now called self-centeredness, if you like, and then all the other afflictions arising based on that self-centeredness. That then determines what other afflictions are there, especially in the 21st century, that have become a big problem. What do you think? In the 21st century?
Greed.
Pardon?
Greed.
Greed, yes. Another one?
Competition, like jealousy.
Envy, exactly. Competitiveness. There's nothing wrong with competitiveness as such. You know, competitiveness as such is kind of like, I want to be just as good as they are, because, you know, basically you look at others and you want to be just like that. That's not the problem. Envy is the problem. Because envy means you don't want them to have the success that they do. You want it for yourself, but you don't want them to have it. What kind of afflictions do you recognize in that? I call it an affliction which is 2 in 1. It's 2 in 1. Which two could I be talking about? Which two are part of envy? The 2.
Jealousy.
Pardon?
Jealousy.
Yeah, well, that's already envy.
Okay.
That is envy. So envy, well, jealousy actually, strictly speaking, the word jealousy actually means if you're jealous in a kind of romantic relationship, so you're jealous if the person you're close to goes with someone else. Here I'm using the word in the strictest sense. Envy, when you're not happy when someone has something that you have. That's really what it is, right? So jealousy sometimes is used loosely. So even if you said they're the same, but it would still mean they're 2 in 1. 2 afflictions that are part of envy. What could they be? Yes?
It could be fear and anxiety.
Fear and anxiety, they're not actually afflictions, mental afflictions. We'll get into them, but they're not seen as mental affliction. They can be helpful. Whereas mental afflictions are usually not helpful. There's actually a positive kind of fear. Fear of suffering is seen as a good kind of fear. Yeah. Which afflictions that we're all aware of? Yes?
Covetousness.
Pardon?
Shubham. How do you say?
Covetousness.
Yeah, covetousness.
Covetousness.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah, 1. Okay, covetousness or just good old attachment. Yeah, covetousness, attachment. Okay.
And
And?
anger towards others. Anger towards others.
Yeah, resentment. You don't like the other person for being successful, so that's aversion. And then aversion and attachment. 2 in 1. Right? You want the package, 2 in 1? Choose envy. Yeah, does that make sense? So if our neighbor is, for instance, very successful in their work, they just got that pay rise. So I want that pay rise. I want to be as successful. So covetousness, which is a type of attachment, wanting something, kind of greed or desire, inflict of a desire, if you want. There are different words for that. But on the other hand, resenting the other person for that. Competitiveness could just be like attachment. I mean, it depends your motivation. It could be attachment, but it's not as bad. So you're not unhappy about their success, but you want the same. That is not as bad as envy, obviously, because you don't have aversion as part of that. And it's really painful. And we usually keep a secret as well. We don't want the other person to know we're envious of them, right? Because that even validates that we don't want them to think, whoa, on top of like having what we want, to then know we envy them for that. So we wouldn't talk about it. There are certain afflictions, interestingly, we try to hide. And others we don't have a problem with. Which ones do we try to hide? I mean, we may actually, I mean, it's not like we're all about being totally secretive about it, but I guess in general we would hide envy, right? Are there other ones that we would hide? Yes?
Maybe when we criticize other people.
Criticizing other people. We would hide that?
Like sometimes I can look at someone, thinking something about this someone, but like keep it in my mind.
Oh, you having aversion towards that person, but then criticizing them, pretending we're trying to do them a favor, kind of thing.
So not in that term, like maybe judgmental, to be judgmental.
To be judgmental, okay. Yeah, we would probably hide that one, right? Being judgmental, yeah, we would hide that, I guess. We want to seem as really fair and objective, in, you know, like objective in the sense of like not having emotions being part of that. What other affliction do you think we hide? Pardon? Fear is not actually an affliction. I don't think it's a mental affliction. But we should discuss that. I mean, it's definitely a negative emotion, an unpleasant emotion, just as grief is, sadness is. It's not something we like, and still it is not considered to be an afflictive emotion. It's not harmful. It's not harmful in the way attachment and so forth are. Pardon? Guilt. Oh, guilt, that's an interesting one. Are Indians guilty? Do Indians feel guilty? Tibetans don't really. Tibetans don't even have a word for it. So traditionally, I don't know they do. Traditionally means like affected by the Dharma. I'm not sure they do. All right, but let's look at guilt at another time. But what about being stingy? Do we hide being stingy? Right? We don't want to, we're like, I don't want to give that to them, but I want to be, like stinginess, I think we hide, don't we? We want to seem generous. I don't know, maybe some people don't. I'm just thinking, what are the ones that are usually, I mean, I know so many people saying, oh, I'm so attached, or I have so much anger. But people don't admit to envy much, it's much rarer. And they don't admit much to stinginess.
But we don't hide the fact that we want like a lot of stuff. Like it's a.
But that's not stinginess. Stinginess is more like greed. We don't hide. I want more of that. We may not, you know, I just want more. So I can't get enough of this. We do say, oh, I can't get enough of this, you know, I want some more. So I don't think we hide that. But not being able to give to someone, right? Someone is like really poor, and we couldn't get ourselves to give them like, I don't know, maybe 100 rupees or something. Like, we don't really publicize that, do we? Oh, I couldn't give them. I was this really poor person and they really needed my help, but you know, once again, stinginess took over. We don't admit that, right? Because we know we've got so much more than a lot of other people. We could, but anyway, it's just an interesting phenomenon psychologically. Why do we hide some and we don't hide others? What is it with stinginess? Being miser, like miser, stingy. Anyway, that's a different discussion altogether. But hopefully it becomes a little clearer how all these minds are exaggerating. Oh, another one we hide, arrogance, right? Arrogance, we pretend we're humble. So therefore, right, what is humility? Humility can be to be too arrogant to show how arrogant we are. Right? Arrogance is showing, like when other people believe we're humble, it could just be being too arrogant to show our arrogance. So the thing is, arrogance is something we would hide. Because no one likes an arrogant person, and we want other people to like us. Everyone can forgive an angry person, as long as the anger is not directed at us. But arrogance, ugh, no one really likes an arrogant person. Yeah. So anyway, and what does the arrogance do? What does it exaggerate? What does it exaggerate? Huh? The self, right? So arrogance is kind of like an extremer version of a self-centeredness, I guess. Yeah, it's self-centeredness, of course, that's the basis, and we all have that to a certain degree. And a certain degree is important, but the fact that we all have it is very, very important. And as I said in the beginning, do not underestimate that, because it's so deeply ingrained in us that on a certain level, right now, we cannot control it. We absolutely cannot control it. We can control it on the Kosa level, but when it comes down to a level of raw survival, very difficult for us to expect ourselves to give up our own. I'm always reminded of this video I once watched. I don't even know why they showed that on the television, but I just happened to be in Germany at the time when there was a stampede in an area in Germany where they had this love parade. So like 1 million or more people had come together, and the police made a mistake. They blocked some exits, and more people were trying to exit from there. Didn't realize it was blocked. More people came, and you had a stampede. So they were squashed to death, basically. It was terrible. All young people. And they showed some of the video footage. Of course, they blurred the faces, so you couldn't recognize anyone. But you could see in that moment, people couldn't breathe. So they just wanted to get out, and they climbed over other people. It seemed really selfish, but I knew if I was in that situation, there's like an instinct that takes over. So unless it's your child or someone really close to you, it's really difficult to ask people to just say, all right, I'm not going to climb over you to save my life. To me, this was a really important lesson in the strength of self-centeredness. It's so strong. It's been with us for so long. We cannot wish it away. We should not work against it. We should work with it. That's very important. So it's in that moment of survival, self-centeredness takes over. So let's not even deal with that in that moment. We can't. Let's deal with the everyday kind of moments of self-centeredness in such a way that we become aware of it and we work with it. Now, what is an example of Buddhist teachings where self-centeredness is used to give a Dharma teaching? What do you think? Can you think of an example where self-centeredness, the fact that we have self-centeredness, is actually used for the Dharma in a positive way, where you use it in a positive way? Can you think of something? It's actually used for Dharma teachings. You use self-centeredness. The fact that we have self-centeredness is used in such a way in the Dharma teaching that can be very effective. In what way?
Like if I want the other person to be happy, first of all, I have to create that happiness within me, so then it passes on to
Create happiness in me. Oh, well,
compassion. I mean, not happiness.
compassion is right.
Yeah.
So be compassionate if you want to be happy. Be selfless if you want to be happy. Huh? So it seems to trigger the self, right? Like the whole thing about karma. If you want to be happy, don't harm others. So sometimes people, when they learn the Dharma, they say like, what is all this teaching? Aren't you reinforcing self-centeredness by always promising the self some happiness and well-being? So it seems you're just strengthening it. It seems that way, right? But that's only in the beginning. It's only in the beginning in that we need to work with the self-centered mind. We have to do that. Therefore, there's nothing wrong. Our self-centered mind right now is pretty much in charge, so don't work against it. It's just coming back with a vengeance. It's going to get stronger if you in any way suppress it. Work with it. Therefore, I don't want to be harmed. I don't harm others. That's where it all starts off with. But at some point, when you continue with your practice, so you stop harming others, you generate love, compassion, and initially we do it to benefit ourselves. But at some point, the good thing is that practice actually helps us to eradicate self-centeredness. That practice actually helps us to overcome self-centeredness. So it's like self-centeredness is used in such a way that it destroys self-centeredness. Does that make sense? All right, I think it's time to stop. I think I heard the bell. What time is it now? 5 o'clock, yeah. So we have time to dedicate, take a moment to dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated, whatever positive potential we accumulated here as a group, to make sure it's not gone to waste. It doesn't just ripen in some unimportant positive experience, but rather may it ripen in such a way that it becomes a cause for us to understand our afflictions better, our mental afflictions better, in order to initially reduce them, but being able to then, or enabling us eventually, or at some point then, to totally overcome them in such a way that we can help others to do exactly the same. Be an example to others and know very effectively how to guide others to that same state. So with this in mind, let's focus on that as part of our dedication, and then recite the prayer on page 31. May the precious bodhicitta arise, if not yet born. When generated, may it never diminish, but increase more and more. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Oh, and your discussion. All right, for tonight, you have your first discussion group. So what I always want you to do in the discussion group, that's always the same basically. I want you to discuss what of what you've learned so far is in any way helpful for your daily life. To share this with each other. Is this in your day-to-day life? Think back of your own daily life. There's anything so far you could actually take with you and integrate into your daily life. That's one part. That's one thing I want you to discuss. Spend some time on that and just exchange it so you can learn from each other on that. And the second part is discussing the different exaggerated minds, in what way we exaggerate. So afflictive emotions, the way we've heard, and in what way is fear, even if it may exaggerate, not considered to be an afflictive emotion. In what way may fear be different, and grief, for instance, sadness, grief. Is that also considered a mental affliction? I've already said it isn't. Why not? It's negative, it's unpleasant, right? But in what way is there one category that's seen as afflictive, as harmful, versus other categories that don't have the same? What's the difference? All right. Enjoy your evening, and I'll see you again in the morning.
So we do 2 groups, right?
Yeah, 2 groups. So you could just do later on when you get together to then divide. You could just say one says 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then once you're done, you have those with 1. You go in one group, or if you find another way, it's actually with so few people, it's easy to divide the groups. Yeah, have 2 groups. Lovely. Thank you.